So Ashreen, I'll start introducing her. Ashreen has been part of Bangladesh's basketball team for several years, an activist promoting women's equality in sport, and the founder and chairperson of the first female-led non-profit organization promoting girls and women's basketball, Deshi Ballers, the name of the organization. I'll keep it brief so that you can talk about your own work, your challenges, and your wins. I give the microphone to Ashreen Mridha now.
Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm so inspired to listen to all of these stories of such amazing female athletes across the region. As you mentioned, I've played sports all my life. I can't recall a time when I wasn't playing sports. It feels like I was born while playing. And I've played for the national team. And as gradually as I grew up, I transitioned from being a player or an athlete into an activist for women's sports. And I think it comes from the challenges and from the struggles that I've personally faced myself. And eventually I went on to a sports program funded by ESPN and the US State Department. And I came back home and I formed my own organization where I wanted to empower women through sports. In terms of challenges, I would say, first of all, we are a cricket-dominated nation. I think we are a cricket-dominated region, so to speak. Naturally, other sports such as basketball, struggle to find the infrastructure and the funding to grow. And of course, majority of the investments and media coverage goes behind the bigger sport, which is great, and it's worked out really well for us. But the smaller sports, especially those that require, an engineered court, because unlike cricket and football, you can play it on an open field, but basketball is something where you actually need an engineered ground. So these sports really struggle to get recognized in a country where cricket is so big. But having said that, I think the participation of girls in sports is generally low, and it's a global issue, particularly in Bangladesh, coming from primarily a Muslim country. Culturally, girls are not encouraged to play outdoor sports. So that's there. And of course, right now, there's an increasing pressure of academics that leads children, especially girls, to deprioritize sports from their childhood. But the biggest challenge is, I think, sports is encouraged as a passion and not as a profession. And simply because of some of the things that the other athletes mentioned, there is no money. I have played basketball for the national team for many years. I never earned a salary, not a decent enough salary to sustain a living or to support my family. And hence I had a job on the side, and I was a part-time athlete. I would have loved to be a full-time athlete, but I couldn't be. But regardless whether or not somebody wants to pursue sports, a girl wants to pursue sports recreationally or professionally, I think they should be allowed to do so. And to get more and more girls into sports, I think every single person has a role to play, whether or not it's not only the federation or the sports bodies problem to solve. I think our friends, our parents, our uncles, aunts, teachers, coaches, and more importantly, our brothers, our husbands, the men in our family need to step up and show up and speak for us. I think gender equality is not only a woman's problem to solve anymore. And that has always been there as I grew up, and I've seen that happening. But I think right now, the more important thing to focus on is the development of sports for girls. I think more focus needs to go behind encouraging girls to come play. Is it really that women can't excel in sports? I think we've broken those questions and answered them onto everyone's face. Look at our Bangladesh cricket team and look at our Bangladesh football team and all the other women who've done well. Sometimes they've done better than our women, our men, and clearly we still don't get that, the respect that we deserve. In basketball, we still don't have a women's national league, despite having a national team since 2009. And I was part of the team, the first team that Bangladesh had for women's basketball. We've never had a female coach. We've never had a female referee, never had a female manager. Why? And why is it that federations also feel that they don't need to invest behind women? Why do they always feel that when women cross a certain age, and once they get married, they are no longer eligible for sports? I have faced this myself as I grew up and I got married eventually. I was sort of classified as somebody who was not fit to be part of the team anymore, just because I was married or just because I had crossed a certain age. So I think the root issue behind all of this comes from the fact that there aren't enough women on the leadership roles. In the boards of the sports federations and the places where these decisions are made. And by representation, I don't mean that, give women a token seat where she will just sit and be part of a meeting, but without any empowerment or without any right to make a decision. We must have active women on these boards who can connect with these female players, who can talk to us, who can understand these challenges and then, formalize actions to solve those. If I give the example of the nonprofit that I'm running, Deshi Ballers, I have 7 members working for me. 4 of them are women. So naturally, obviously women's sports development is a top priority in the organization that I'm running. So it's clearly, proven that unless you have a 50-50 ratio on the table where decisions are made, you cannot have equal opportunities for both boys and girls in sports. We must have women taking part in those discussions. So these are some of the challenges. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad because you raised so many things. I mean, you talked about the challenges that being an amateur sport. Not getting a salary, how difficult that is. You can't sort of pursue a sport as a passion and yet do really well in it. You talked about marriage and how married women are perceived once they are married. They are kind of people think that you write them off from the sporting field. So you also talked about leadership roles, which I think is extremely important because sport is such a hyper masculine sort of culture, and sport has been always so male dominated. The committees, the governing bodies are all male dominated, and only with more and more women penetrating through those sort of spaces, probably we can move towards change. And I'm so glad that you have started your own organization and giving leadership to girls and women in Bangladesh. Ashreen, thank you so much